أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وخاتم النبيين البشير النذير رحمة الله للعالمين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, we find ourselves in this comfortable time zone during the week, in the presence of Allah Jalla wa Ala. There couldn't be any place or anywhere or any time better than joining Allah Azza wa Jal in His revealed meanings and in His enlightening guidance. We will continue in Surat Yusuf, this surah that mentioned actually the root of the problem, the psychological details in the ayat, the social increments in the ayat. All of these put together have us obviously with Allah's guidance, dive deep down inside of our human nature, a human nature that is shared by whites and blacks and Sunnis and Shi'is and Arabs and non-Arabs, Arabians and non-Arabians, etc., etc. So here we are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this journey in Surat Yusuf. And we've reached the ayah where Allah says, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is ayah number 22 in Surah Yusuf. So what is this ayah saying? Of course, maybe some of you, if you want, you want to open your Quran, and those of you who are not conversant and communicative in the Arabic language, look at the translations you have, and then maybe you want to do this before you begin following the explanations that I have. Or maybe you want to do it as I'm explaining. I don't know, it's up to you. You can prepare for this every Thursday evening or Friday morning before this time. I mean, Thursday evening, Friday morning in my time frame, but whatever time zone you are in the world, so that mentally some of you may be able to absorb more of the meanings. Some others, it may not work that way. But anyways, however way you want to, just to enrich your understanding of these ayat. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. And the simple translation of this, and when he, meaning Yusuf, بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ, reached his prime. The prime here it means when he transformed from being a youngster, a kid, a young boy, to reaching manhood. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. Now, let's stop for a moment. In human nature, some of these things we don't give much thought to, and some of them we go through very quickly without taking some time to understand the transition from being a boy into becoming a man. There are these transitional years, or this transitional time period, which could be less than a year, however way it goes maybe in the different parts of the world. Some may begin at age 11, some may begin at age 12, and some may begin at age 16, 17, or even 18. We don't know. This is a time period that is shared depending on the different physiologies and the different geographies of the world, cultures, etc. But this is the time period that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is focusing our attention on in the case of Yusuf alayhi salam. In this time period, there are three things that we sort of use the word maturity for: cognition, impression, and motivation or stimulation. These three elements, when someone uses the word maturity, what happens when we mature, there's a heightening of our cognition, our impression, and our motivation. It goes from being a boy or someone who has not developed into these years, let's call them the teenage years of life. But during these teenage years of life, these three components in our own psychology, they gel together: our cognition with our impression, with our motivation. And they do so, if we wanted to shift to the medical field, with the circulation of hormones in our bodies. This is what we are talking about here. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Now, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when Yusuf reached this age of becoming a grown-up, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. We gave him hukman wa ilma. Now notice, in all of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us Yusuf went to school, or Yusuf was tutored, or Yusuf received a revelation, or any of this. All he said is when he reached that age of maturing manhood, Allah gave him hukman. Hukm is the ability to distinguish between what is al-haq and what is al-batil, what is truth and what is falsehood, what is al-ma'ruf and what is al-munkar, that which is known to be correct, self-evidently correct, and that which is self-evidently an error or wrong. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. This is the experience. Wa'ilma is knowledge. How did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him this knowledge? It's as we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't mention that he went to school or he graduated from a certain institute, whatever the educational setups were in those days and in those times. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Okay, here it's very important to catch the meaning of the last words in this ayah. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. It is in this manner that we compensate those who improve what they do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about Yusuf in the beginning of this ayah, but in ending the ayah, he's speaking about everyone. So Allah compensates everyone with hukm and with ilm, with the acumen to distinguish very properly between al-ma'ruf and al-munkar, al-haq and al-batil, and knowledge. So knowledge comes, as per this ayah, knowledge and the quality of differentiating between al-haq and al-batil, a keen differentiation, not a fuzzy one, a keen one. This differentiation comes by those who improve everything that they do. Let's say you wanted to do something. You wanted to write a story. You write a story today, and then the next time you try to do the same thing, you improve it. You self-consciously improve the writing of your story. Or if you are a mechanic, or if you are a teacher, or whatever capacity you are in life, if you have that drive in you to improve what you are doing, then you become a muhsin. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And then we go on to the next ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is setting the stage for the next ayah. The next ayah says, remember, Yusuf is living now in upper class Egypt, in the affluent castle or mansion of the populist ruler of Egypt, Azizu Misr. Aziz means he's popular. He's not Fir'aun. He's not Fir'aun al-Misr. He's Azizu Misr. And Misr, like any other establishment in the world, had good rulers and it had bad rulers. Most of us are familiar with its bad rulers, criminal rulers, the fara'ina, the pharaohs. But in this particular instance, there was a very influential ruler who was called Azizu Misr, the dear one of Egypt, the adored ruler of Egypt, the beloved decision maker of Egypt. Azizu Misr. That's where Yusuf was. He was in that. This should remind us also of Musa, who was brought up not in a good ruler's palace, but in a bad ruler's palace. Musa was brought up in the household of the Pharaoh. Yusuf was brought up in the household of Aziz Misr. Two contrasts, two opposites. وراودته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه. وراودته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه. The word rawada is in the Arabic language on the scale or the metric of fa'ala, rawada. So there's an interaction, there's an engagement. Who initiates this interpersonal engagement or interaction? Engagement, it doesn't mean anything that concerns marriage or anything, just the linguistic meaning of the word. You engage someone. You can engage someone in fighting, you can engage someone in an argument, you can engage someone in a competition. So this type of interaction was initiated by the wife of Aziz Misr, the wife who's the lady of the household now in this upper class setting. So what did she do? now that Yusuf has reached the age of manhood, he's a man now, he's before a boy. And nothing gives us, there's no information about what was going on between Yusuf the boy and this lady who's married to the popular decision maker in Egypt. So now there's a new element here. The psychology, the physiology of Yusuf now, he's no longer a young boy, he's now a man, and a handsome man for that matter, as we shall see in the ayat that follow. So a very attractive, handsome young man. And she sees this in him. She couldn't resist her inclination towards him. وراودته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه. Now, how can this be? It'd be explaining. Let's imagine in our minds for a moment. Yusuf is in one of these rooms in that mansion, and he's there, doing housework probably. He brings this item there and he puts that item there, and if something is misplaced, he takes it where it belongs and all of this. So وراودته, she engages him, meaning she brings him into her emotional zone. She wants him to click with her emotionally. وراودته التي هو في بيتها. Now, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وراودت امرأة العزيز يوسف عن نفسه. وراودت المرأة يوسف عن نفسه. No. The ayah says, وراودته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه. The woman in whose home Yusuf lives now is attempting to engage him in her passion zone. And then the ayah goes on to say, وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. The word غَلَّقَ also has a propane meaning. It's a verb that has a propane push in it. It's not وَأَغْلَقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. أغلقت الأبواب would have been she just closed the doors or bolted the doors. When you say وغلقت الأبواب, the emphasis in the فعل metric of the verb غلق, غلقت, means one of two things, or both of them together, because one is not exclusive of the other. Sometimes people think that the word, a certain word in the Quran doesn't have a range of meanings. And that's why you say you encounter one mufassir says this, the other mufassir says that. Well, why can't both of them be correct? Because there's no contradiction in meaning. So one of the understandings of the word وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ is that she made sure that the doors were locked. So the غلقت here is the quality of locking the doors. She made sure that the doors were firmly and securely locked. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. The other one is غَلَّقَ, is used to mean that there were many doors. So she went and she locked those many doors. And the combined meaning of غَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ, she securely and firmly bolted and locked all those doors, multiple doors that led up to the room that she and Yusuf are in. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ وَقَالَتْ هِيتَ لَكَ. And she said, I am now ready for you. Of course, this is the Quranic, sanitized, moral way of saying in today's, language, let's have sex, or let's go to bed together, or however way the expression of today's language is. She said, he talak. For those who understand Arabic, tahayyatu lak. I am ready for you, in that sense, in the masculine, feminine sense. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ وَقَالَتْ هِيتَ لَكَ. قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. Yusuf replied, مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. My only refuge is Allah. It's the only secure place I can go. Nothing is secure here. مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Yusuf is saying here, it's like this. Oh Allah, there's no place secure to go except to you. Remember, right now there is a type of danger, moral danger, that he is going to fall into sin. At that moment, see, this is the quality of those who live with Allah. At moments like that, your internal self seeks Allah, wants Allah for protection and for preservation. قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. So here, if you look at the different qira'at, is a full stop. Yusuf says, مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. And then, إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. It is He, Allah, who has given me this elaborate, comfortable, accommodating place to be. So Yusuf is acknowledging that everything that has happened to him, including him being in this luxurious atmosphere, is from Allah. إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Allah will not have people who wrong themselves become successful. All of these almost split moment feelings and impressions and thoughts circulating in him within these few minutes, in which there was a honey trap set up for him. إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. There's another understanding of this ayah, and both of them don't contradict each other. This is the enrichment of our God-given minds to understand Allah's revealed words. So when Yusuf says, Ma'adh Allah, oh Allah, it's your protection only. I can only be safe with you. In moments like this, these are very weak moments in human nature, when a person is seduced into an act of adultery. Ma'adha Allah. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathway. So the other understanding of this is not that it is Allah who offered me this comfortable and accommodating and luxurious position that I am in. Innahu Rabbi. Rabb here is in reference to Aziz Misr, the husband of this woman who's trying to trap Yusuf into a sexual relationship. So Yusuf does not want to show disloyalty and treason, emotional treason, to Aziz Misr, who offered him this. Remember, Aziz Misr in the ayat before this tells his wife, Akrimi mathwa, asa an yanfa'ana aw nattakhidahu walada. He tells his wife, honor the accommodation of this lad, of Yusuf, when he bought him. And Yusuf came into this house, into this high-class household. So Yusuf is saying, I can't betray my, I'm going to use the word here. I know some Salafi minds and all of this, they go haywire. But this word also like the Arabic language and the English language, the word Rabb, depending on context, could refer to Allah, like the first understanding we just explained here, or it could refer to a person of status, of responsibilities over you. And so it's like the word Lord. The word Lord could refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and could refer to a person of status in society. So he's saying, Yusuf is saying, Ma'ad Allah, innahu Rabbi ahsana mathway. And then full stop here. And then innahu la yuflihu al-zalimun. That's another independent sentence. So, and both of there's no contradiction. Whether Yusuf is feeling towards Allah, and this is not any form of shirk. They're like saying, if you obey the Prophet, you obey Allah. Is that a form of shirk? Obeying the Prophet is a form of shirk, if that obedience is obedience to Allah. In the same way here, Yusuf's feeling, if he feels his moral responsibility towards Allah, there's no contradiction with that feeling, his interpersonal or social responsibility towards the person who gave him respectable and comfortable accommodation. Innahu la yuflihu al-zalimun. And then the ayah goes on to say, because if he did something like that, if he fell into this sex trap, then he would have done injustice to himself. He would have done injustice to the person who offered him this comfortable living, this comfortable living quarter. So, and whoever does injustice to himself and does injustice to others is not going to be successful. Innahu la yuflihu al-zalimun. And then the ayah goes on, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. This means that the woman, the Mrs. here, Her Highness, in today's language, was on the verge of bringing him into her sexual zone. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ, bringing Yusuf in. And then the ayah says, وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Now, In the first part of this ayah, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ, everyone understands that. The mind doesn't go this way or that. It's a common understanding that now she is a few moments away from drawing her into her sex appeal and thereon into the consummation of the whole act. But here when it says وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ, here's where you have the minds going in every direction as how do we understand Yusuf when the same word is used with her, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ, hammat, and when it comes to Yusuf, وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Actually, I want to skip now to Burhan Rabbih. There's nothing that is material about Burhan Rabbih. Yusuf's sustainers evidence. Something Yusuf in those critical and slippery moments in human nature, Yusuf saw what is called Burhana Rabbihi. This is an area I think that needs further investigation in the human psyche, in the human soul, in the human psychology and mentality and human nature. We have to dig deep down. I mean, some of these tafsirs said, look, this is how simple some of them explained this. They said, at that moment, at that falling into sin, split seconds, Yusuf heard his own father telling him, do not do this. This does not behoove you as my son. Remember, that relationship. And so the dearest person in Yusuf's life came to him and told him in that moment, don't do this. That's one of the explanations. لولا أن رأى برهان ربه, had Yusuf not seen his sustainers, meaning Allah's burhan. I think Burhana Rabbihi has a more undiscovered meaning. And it's very difficult for us to put this whole experience in a laboratory. We can't, some things we can, there's trial and error, but we can't come and do this to see what Burhana Rabbihi is, except, the best I can explain this is that there was a disconnect in Yusuf, in his own psychology. There was a disconnect between his instinct that tends towards, he's a human being, he's not an angel. There's a tendency in him when he's put in, and we don't know how she was dressed, and we don't know what parts of her body she exposed to him, but definitely it was in moments of heat, so to speak. So in those moments of heat that she wanted to trap him in, and his human nature inclined towards that, at that moment, his conscience checked him. That's Burhana Rabbihi. His conscience vetoed or trumped or canceled his instinct. In other words, his moral self defeated his arousal. لولا أن رأى برهان ربه كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء. See, it's in individuals like this, not many of them around. We're all human beings, and we know what temptation is. We know what falling into sin is. Hopefully none of us have been entrapped in moments in life like this when we fell into that sin. But it is through these types of challenges in life that Allah retards, repels these acts from those who are with Him, living with Him, breathing with Him, walking with Him, doing with Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to their aid. لولا أن رأى برهان ربه كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء. It is in this manner, through these moments of life. These are moments of education. This is true education. It's not like someone taking a book and then memorizing things, and then at the end of the day, or at the end of the season, or at the end of the school year, or at the end of the semester, or at the end of the 4 years or 6 years or whatever years, they become whoever they are now officially designated to be. Allah doesn't give official titles to anyone. This is how Allah honors those who are with Him. كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء إنه من عبادنا المخلصين. Indeed, Yusuf was one of our bona fide, one of our sincere devotees. There's two words that occur in the Quran, mukhlas and mukhlis. And the reading of this ayah could be, in the one that we have, قراءة حفص عن عاصم, is مخلصين. He was, Allah honored him with ikhlas, with being totally devoted to Allah. And this, a moment like this in life, a challenge like this, a temptation like this, proves who belongs to Allah in his total being, into the fibers of his feelings. He is with Allah. This is where Yusuf was. So those mukhlasun, those who are devoted and devout, out of their devotion and devout comes their jihad. The mukhlisin, with the kasra on the lam instead of the fatha, mukhlasin has a fatha on the lam, mukhlisin has a kasra on the lam. Mukhlisin are those who are sincere, and out of their sincerity, let's take these two words, Allah's favor and the effort for Allah. The mukhlas person is one who is given Allah's favor and therefore exerts his effort. The mukhlas is the one who exerts his effort to gain Allah's favor. Both of them going in parallel directions towards Allah, but with different ground motivations. And then it says, وَاسْتَبَقَا الْبَابِ. Both of them now were racing towards the door, obviously the final door, for different reasons. Yusuf was racing towards that door he's now emotionally and mentally out of it. He's no longer in her trap, emotionally and mentally, but he physically wants to get out now. She, on the other hand, was racing towards the door to have him come back into her zone of appeal and sexual attraction. واستبقا الباب وقدت قميصه من دبر وألفيا سيدها عند الباب. So when they were running towards the door, she held onto his shirt. You remember the shirt? Yusuf's shirt with his brothers. Now Yusuf's shirt with her. So she held his shirt from the back, and it ripped because he was forcefully moving forward. It ripped the shirt. وقدت قميصه من دبر وألفيا سيدها عند الباب. When they reached the door, her master, her husband, was right there, entering, opening the door. This is the climax. قالت ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا إلا أن يسجن أو عذاب أليم. She immediately commented. The Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mention Yusuf. He doesn't mention him. The first comment comes out of her. She says, what is the punishment of a person who was planning something detrimental to your family? She's suggesting that Yusuf was up to no good. She said, what is his punishment except that you throw him in prison or you persecute him, you torture him, you put him through agony. So this is, I mean, she could have excluded the it's like she's trying to put words into her husband's mouth. She's trying to give him an idea. You could put him in prison, or you can, send him over to those who do their torture stuff. إلا أن يسجن أو عذاب أليم. قال هي راودتني عن نفسي. Yusuf now speaks. She's the one who tried to draw me into this sexual act. وشهد شاهد من أهلها. Then there, someone from her own household, from her own family, bore witness, saying that if Yusuf's shirt was ripped from the front, then she is telling the truth and he's lying. But if Yusuf's shirt was ripped from the back, then she is lying and he's telling the truth. Notice here that he always says, this witness is always mentioning the lady before Yusuf, the high-class lady before Yusuf. فصدقت وهو من الكاذبين فكذبت وهو من الصادقين. The form of speech here tells you what type of society. Even after all of this, they should have known Yusuf better. They still consider people who have status. So he said, وإن كان قميصه قد من دبر فكذبت وهو من الصادقين فلما رأى قميصه قد من دبر قال إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم. When this master populist high-ranking decision maker in Egypt saw, he knew what was going on. He said, "Oh, this is part of your scheming, women's scheme. إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم." It's a conspiracy. Kaid could mean conspiracy, could mean scheme, it could mean plot. Something that, evil thoughts that you've been going through concerning Yusuf. Inna kaydakunna azim. There's an observation here that I want to end this segment of ayat with, a couple of observations. The first one is, those who conspire, those who work behind the scenes, they are weak. They're not strong. Conspiracy is a feature of people who are morally weak, mentally weak, and physically weak. They begin to conspire. They want to trap. They want you to fall into their schemes. A strong person is not one who's given to conspiracy. Only the weaker ones are the ones who think like that. And they even assume others think like that. So their conspiracies go deeper and deeper. The other thing I want to mention here, in trying to close observations here about this, now that we understood these ayat up until here, I want you to think. We're going to fold in another 10 or 15 minutes or so. You're going to go your own way, and I'm going to go my own way, and we're going to, inshallah, meet here next week. Same time, same place, if Allah wills it. But remember Yusuf. Yusuf was loved by his father. Remember the ayat we covered there? But he was hated by his brothers. The love of Yaqub for Yusuf generated the hate in his brothers that resulted in him being thrown into a well with all possibilities of death. Now we have a person who loves Yusuf. Yusuf's father loved him. And the consequence of Yusuf's father's love for him resulted in his brothers trying to get rid of him through death or other means. This love of Yusuf by this woman, she loved him. How could anyone turn back or turn against someone's love? But it was the wrong type of love. And this love is going to result in him going to prison. Yusuf's father's love resulted in Yusuf being thrown in a well. This lady's love for Yusuf resulted in Yusuf being thrown into prison. Isn't there something to think about? Love can be wrong if it's a selfish love. The reason Yusuf's brothers wanted to get rid of him because they were selfish. The reason the woman now who tried to sexually trap Yusuf, she loved him, but it was a selfish love. And both the non-selfish love of the father and the selfish love of Imra'at al-Aziz, both of them resulted in Yusuf being isolated. He became an alien because of his brothers. He had to go to a foreign country, living among foreigners. And now he was going to be jailed. He's going to be thrown into prison because of a selfish love. Selfish love in the family, selfish love in the upper crust of society. Both of them worked against Yusuf. That is why in the beginning, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي يُوسُفَ وَإِخْوَتِهِ آيَاتٍ. There are many impossibilities that we can detect in the narrative or the story of Yusuf and his brothers. So I hope we sort of covered this. We said وقال هي راودتني عن نفسي. Then we spoke about his shirt being ripped from the back. And then Yusuf أعرض عن هذا. the next ayah says, وَاسْتَغْفِرِي لِذَنْبِكِ إِنَّكِ كُنْتِ مِنَ الْخَاطِئِينَ. Yusuf, forget about all of this. Avoid all of this. And as for you, the wife of the populist leader, استغفري لذنبك. Ask Allah for forgiveness because of your attempted sin, of your mistake, your error. إنك كنت من الخاطئين. You were definitely in the wrong. This is the last comment about this woman who wanted Yusuf for herself. Now I'll shift gears here and go to a couple of issues I think that are very important. We have to cover them in the minutes that we have left. The first issue is, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the masjid, the museum in Istanbul, Hagia Sophia. Today, Al-Jumu'ah, Friday, is the first time that Muslims have had the opportunity to pray in it, Salat al-Jumu'ah, in something like 86 years. Some people think, there's something sinister or something diabolic or something strictly opportunistic about this. No. Whoever is thinking like that doesn't have his marbles together. This is a step forward, no doubt, but a real step beyond that, if all of us had the maturity enough. As we said previously, what's wrong with a museum becoming a masjid, a mosque? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with a museum becoming a church? What's wrong with a museum becoming a synagogue or a temple or anything else where people show their devotion in the right or wrong way? It's another subject. But at least they try to have a moral character in there. What's wrong with not promoting moral characters? A step beyond that would be converting the military bases. How many military bases do we have in Muslim countries? There's the ruler of a shariqa, someone who has some Islamic tendencies in him. After this Hagia Sophia news came out in the past couple of weeks, he said, we should also call for the reversion of the masjid in Qurtuba to a masjid. It's now not a masjid. Muslims are not allowed to pray there. And the masjid, Hagia Sophia, now anyone can come in there. A Christian, a Jew, an atheist, anyone can come into a masjid. And if there are Christians, this would be interesting to know. If Christians wanted to perform their own type of rituals in there, is someone going to tell them, you can't say a prayer in a masjid? I don't know. I don't know how far this is going to go as far as rituals and technicalities are concerned. But in Qurtuba, a Muslim can't pray in what used to be a masjid. He can't pray. It's against the law. And Greece, I think today or yesterday, whenever, in the past 24 hours sometime, their flags are flying at half staff. They've lowered their flags because Muslims are praying in a masjid. It's something sorrowful about this. But anyways, the step forward, this could be a first step in the right direction. But the second step is for the military bases, let's tell the world, especially those who hide in the shell of Christianity and in the shell of Judaism. Let's tell them, we don't want the military bases you have in our countries, let's make them churches. That would be a step with a lot of messages in it. Military bases becoming churches? Yeah. It's not that we are promoting Trinity or promoting, misinterpretation of the Old and New Testament. No. We are trying to promote the moral character that is in Christianity and Judaism. And we're trying to demote the aggressive militarist character that they are trying to locate in that. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is the Hajj. We are approaching the Hajj, and the Hajj, Waqfat Arafat is supposed to be the 30th of this month, and the 31st is supposed to be Eid al-Adha. I received, I think there's a question here. Someone's asking something that differs in its application to the king's wife. I don't know what the question is, not clear. But anyways, we are approaching the Hajj season. And of course, everyone knows that it's been, I don't have my glasses on. It's been 10 minutes. It's been in the past couple of weeks that the Saudi regime decided to have only 10,000 people come to Mecca. And they chose those people in a secret manner. They didn't even tell us how they chose those people. All of them, of course, living in Saudi Arabia. No one's going to Hajj from outside that country. But everyone who is in there, they chose 10,000. They tell us, we don't know, but this is what they tell us. 30% of them are Saudis and 70% of them are non-Saudis. In that itself, there is discrimination, there's prejudice, there is a lot to be said there. There's a lot of things we have to do about the Hajj. We have to do about Mecca. And hopefully this symbolic, it's only symbolic. The masjid, the Hagia Sophia becoming a masjid is only symbolic. That's all it is. But hopefully this can lead to not only, because also in the news in the past 24 hours, the Israeli Zionists are trying to take over a portion of Al-Haram al-Sharif, where Al-Masjid al-Aqsa and Qubbat al-Sakhra are located. There's an area there there's a few areas that Muslims pray in. One particular area right now, the Zionists are trying to reclaim for themselves in exclusion to the Muslims. This has been their attitude. They want to exclude Muslims. And this is at the root of this. Just like we were getting to the root of the problem of racism and sectarianism, well, this is what we have in front of us right now. Racism and sectarianism and every other type of exclusivist-ism is right now exemplified and manifested in the two regimes in the Arabian Peninsula and in the Holy Land in Palestine. Holy Land South and Holy Land North. I think I've ran out of time. I want to, and it's always been my hope and my desire to allocate more time to looking at geostrategic issues. That's another word. We begin to mature when our language begins to advance, when we begin to hear khutaba and imams and leaders use strategic words to explain divine revelation. And hopefully we will return to this corner of comfort next week in the presence with the guidance of Allah Jalla Sha'nuh. Stay with Allah and He will stay with you regardless of what the material world is like or will be. والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.